184 is stacked this year. There is some exciting competition heading into 184 pounds. I don't know if it's necessarily the toughest weight class. I mean, it's tough, but like the question when people ask, what is the toughest weight class? What is the weight class that you go to? I'll be having that discussion in a couple weeks here on the channel. But for right now, the top 10 and at 184 pounds, top 10 are guys like Miles Amin, Hunter Bolin, Trent Hidley, Louis Dupre, Aaron Brooks, Chris Weiler, Zach Bronigal, Nelson Brands, Parker Keckeisen, Taylor Vance, Dakota Gear. These are all guys who are in the top 10, depending on which rankings you look at. And this is a super interesting weight. And I'm going to give you 5 reasons why it is super interesting. Now, the first reason, actually before I get into that first reason, I do want to talk about this segment that's actually brought to you by Alfie, one of the channel members right here on the Fanco Wrestling YouTube channel. He's actually been a Patreon channel member for the past 6 months and a supporter from day one, really, on the channel, just a long-time supporter of Fanco Wrestling. He actually has his own YouTube channel, which is kind of cool. If you want to check that out, I'll actually have it linked in the description below. But if you're interested in supporting this show, I can't do this show without support from wrestling fans. I cannot do this show without that support. And not only are you supporting the Fanco Wrestling channel, but you're also getting some sweet perks in return. You're getting cool sticker packs. You're getting cool shirts. You're also getting some exclusive content that's not available to the public on YouTube. So if you're interested in checking out the Fanco Wrestling Patreon page, you can check that out down in the description below or going to patreon.com/Fanco Wrestling. Now let's talk about why this weight's so interesting. So first of all, there are minimal returning All-Americans. So there's no returning NCAA champ to this weight. No returning NCAA champs. Let that sink in for a second. So, and actually, a lot of weights there aren't. One of my predictions at the beginning of the season, where there could be 9 returning NCAA champion, or 9 new NCAA champions rather. Now, there was a finalist who was Max Dean of Cornell, but he's of course not wrestling this year. So these are your last NCAA placers, and that's Drew Foster, Max Dean, Miles Martin placed 3rd, Ryan Price of Lehigh, Emery Parker, Chip Ness, Dakota Gear, and Zach Zavatsky. Those were your top 8. So who are the returning All-Americans at this weight class? Who are some of the All-Americans at 184 pounds right now? Because like I said, there are returning All-Americans. There are just a minimal amount of them. And that's Miles Amin, who plays 4th, 3rd, and 3rd in respective years at 174 pounds. So he's actually not quite a returning All-American at 184. Now, Miles Amin, interesting thing to note about him, his last 7 losses were to NCAA champions Mark Hall or Zahid Valencia. Last 7 losses. Dakota Gear of Okie State placed 7th in 2019. Lost this season to Parker Keckeisen of Northern Iowa. It is actually the most recent All-American at 184 pounds. Taylor Vance, also an All-American at this weight, placed 4th in 2018, which was his redshirt freshman year. He has 2 losses to Chris Weiler, who was also in the weight class, as well as Nelson Brands of Iowa. So what's the thing here? You're looking at potentially 8 new All-Americans at 184. So why else is this weight so interesting? Okay, so minimal returning All-Americans, but there's also no real proven number 1. And you may be asking, well, what about Miles Amin? Yeah, I think he should be the number 1 ranked wrestler, but he hasn't wrestled this year yet, so we don't know exactly how he's going to do. Now, should he stay at number 1? Yeah, for now, but it's not really proven, and he is bumping up from 174, so that's why I say that. Hunter Bolin, also top guy, has wins over Trent Hidley. Dupre as an ACC champ. He could be arguably the number 1 guy. I think there are a couple of people who would say that Bolin could be number 1, and if Amin wasn't there and he wasn't the only 3-time returning All-American, I would definitely say that. So that's interesting that he could. I mean, he's a tough top contender. There's also Aaron Brooks, who majored just the other night. Chris Weiler of Wisconsin, who was a transfer from Lehigh. He also has wins over Taylor Vance, and it was a Big Ten champ last year. So Aaron Brooks is a top contender. He's actually number 1 in the Crystal Ball rankings by Willie Saylor. Louis Dupre, an EIWA champ, is having an undefeated season so far, so he's wrestling very solid. And speaking of an undefeated season, that's my next point, is that there are many undefeated wrestlers right now at 184 pounds, and that's what makes it so interesting. So very, very interesting. Britt Wilson of Northern Illinois, 8-0. Jeremiah Kent of Mizzou, 7-0. Keck Eisen of Northern Iowa, 6-0, as well as Bolin and Brooks. DePrey is 4-0, and Lane Malcheski is 3-0 of Michigan State. So you have all these undefeated guys right now, and that was also one of my predictions at the beginning of the season, is because there are less matches, less tournaments, you're probably going to see a lot of undefeated guys going into the conference championships, going into NCAAs. And so that'll be interesting to see. And a couple of these guys will actually face off in the upcoming weeks. So we do have to, we will be looking at that, and that will definitely change. But the fourth reason, there are two more reasons that I have. So minimal returning All-Americans, no proven number one, undefeated wrestlers, and there's lots of new talent. Parker Kegeisen, redshirt freshman, undefeated, just had a win over Dakota Gear. Like I said, a All-American. In sudden victory, he had that win. The redshirt freshman, just a great win. He will face the undefeated Britt Wilson, so those two will have an interesting meetup here. And then the next guy that I do want to discuss is actually John Poznansky. Now, Poznansky is actually kind of interesting here, because the thing about Poznansky of Rutgers is that Poznansky, the true freshman, has wins over Rocky Jordan, Max Lyon, and lost to Owen Webster. So he does have that loss on the year, but he is somebody who has jumped in the rankings, and a lot of people have been interested in seeing how Poznansky is going to do for the rest of the season as such a young guy. There's also, not necessarily new, but some guys that I do want to discuss and talk about are Trent Hidley, Aaron Brooks, Bronigal, as well as Rocky Jordan. Like, these guys, okay, they're not new to the NCAA. However, the thing about them is that they haven't had a chance to perform at the NCAA championships yet. So they've performed well in the postseason, but they haven't performed at NCAA, so we don't know exactly how they're going to do. And how do you think they are going to do? I think that's a very interesting question. I'm interested in seeing how Trent Hidley will perform. How he performs at ACC is different than NCAA. There's a lot of excitement there. And then the last reason is that there's a tough bottom half. I mean, your top guys are tough, and I think that even those guys can be upended and defeated. But the bottom half of this 184 is and by bottom half, you mean like the 5 through 10s, even the 4 through 8s. Those guys who could get on the podium are super interesting. Nelson Brands has wins over Venz and Isaiah Salazar so far this season. And Brands is somebody who's just been super exciting to watch. And especially considering the fact that he jumped in over Abe Assad, who had a solid year last year, but Brands is now just dominating. And I'm interested to see how he's going to do. He makes getting onto the stand tough. And, young guys, younger guys, they don't always get on the stand. So I'm interested in seeing, it's tough to perform at your first NCAA championships. A couple other guys, Bronigal, who has wins over Brands, Rocky Jordan, but had lost to Chris Weiler. Jeremiah Kent, the sophomore, emerging talent. Rocky Jordan is not having the best season yet, with the losses to Zach Bronigal, John Poznansky, and Malcheski of Michigan State. And then Michael Batista of Virginia, with a recent win over Greg Harvey, that match with Virginia and Pitt. So 184 pounds is kind of a wild weight, and is super interesting to me, and seeing what will happen. Which guys do you think will get on the podium, and which guys do you think may just miss out? If you like this clip and are looking for more wrestling news and discussion, I recommend that you check out the full Fanco Wrestling Show podcast, which is live on this YouTube channel every single week. You can click here to subscribe to be notified of new and upcoming videos, or you can check out the Fanco Wrestling Show on your favorite podcasting platform to listen on the go. Stop stalling and start listening today.